I've played the Battlefield 2042 beta for a few hours now, and there's certainly a lot to say. I should probably make it clear that I'm a pretty big Battlefield fan, and even with this game being my most anticipated title of this year, I've come away with some serious concerns. The first thing you'll notice is that unlike a lot of betas in recent years, Battlefield certainly feels like it wasn't just for marketing purposes. There are models where they obviously don't belong, some of the balance seems outright strange, and at one point, the tank I was driving literally couldn't turn right. It was like I was a USP driver who was maximizing fuel efficiency, but instead of delivering mail, I was delivering a tasty vehicle on a silver platter, as I couldn't avoid the 16 rocket-wielding idiots trying to end my life. At this stage, I'd put these in the category of acceptable bugs, as with a bit of polishing, these should be mostly ironed out before launch. What's more concerning is the loadout system, and excluding plans to monetize certain gameplay features, which is another conversation completely. There were changes that I think might attract some negative attention. Abandoning the 4-class system of previous entries, players now pick operators, which locks in their main gadget and a single perk. From there, you can pick any category of weapon you want, as well as any secondary gadget, and anything in your grenade slot. This might not be a welcome change for the majority of hardcore fans, but I suspect the casual audience will appreciate this added flexibility, myself included. The real change is being able to swap your weapon attachments on the fly, which I suspect will become a staple of the shooter genre sooner rather than later. The ability to modify your gun as the situation demands is such a fantastic quality of life feature. However, without actually knowing how many attachments come with each gun, or how customizable this system will be, it's too soon to sing its praises, especially when stacked up against the bonkers customization of Battlefield 4. This, compounded by no way to actually see the number of weapons in the release build, means it's probably best to stay cautiously optimistic. Another thing you may or may not immediately notice is that in order to populate the enormous 128 player servers, DICE has implemented a system of filling empty slots with bots, who are then rotated out when real people join the game. There's actually a lot to like about this idea, as trying to find this many people at peak times, or in low population regions, can be impossible after launch, let alone years after release, but it's not without its problems. As you might imagine, bots are designed to be easy, because obviously the developers want to make players have fun playing the game, but they fall into a problem. Titanfall made a similar system, which made the small teams much more palatable, because if there wasn't a real player to shoot, there was almost always a few grunts to farm and torment. The difference, however, is that Titanfall grunts were clearly marked. They only granted a fraction of the points for killing a real player, and you could often temper your expectations around their own capabilities. In Battlefield, however, bots are for the most part indistinguishable from humans, meaning sometimes you'll get absolutely bodied because you thought someone was an AI soldier, and other times, you'll literally be able to run up to a bot and punch them to death, because at the end of the day, they're designed to be murdered. Perhaps this won't be nearly as much of a concern when the game launches, but if you see anything impressive in this video, it was probably because there wasn't a human on the other end. The vehicles themselves seem more interesting than ever before, with many having a ton of seats, with their own roles and weapons. Like pretty much everything in this game, they also look fucking excellent, with some top-notch sound design to boot, because as we know, Battlefield is pretty much known for pushing PCs to their limits, and wishing we lived in a world without crypto miners having a monopoly on graphics cards. The way the vehicles handle, on the other hand, leaves a lot to be desired, as it's hard to explain exactly why it felt bad, but it was kind of like trying to play Counter-Strike on a fucking Nintendo Wii remote. The aircrafts are particularly troublesome, however, with Battlefield's air control schemes, this might just be by design. Players should probably expect 99% of people to crash within the first 20 seconds, while the rest go on an 80-player kill streak without ever being taken down. Possibly the most surprising aspect of the game, and perhaps I'm alone on this, but the gunplay didn't quite feel up to the Battlefield standard. I'm not sure if it was the balancing or the feedback, but things didn't feel quite right. A funny example is how I was much more successful scoring long-range kills with a shotgun, as opposed to a weapon that was designed for longer ranges, but I don't want to speak for anyone else on this aspect of the game. By far my biggest gripe with the beta is its non-combat support mechanics, which appear to have devolved from previous entries. Instead of the 10-meter defibrillator revives from Battlefield 4 or the clean animations of Battlefield 5, the developers seem to have taken the worst parts from both and mashed them together in the most disappointing way imaginable. To revive a teammate, you now approach their body, hold down a button for 2 seconds, and your character will do this half-hearted revive animation that still locks you into place. The problem is that in all the times I attempted this, it might have only worked around 3 times out of 10. Most of the time it simply wouldn't register, and you'd end up picking up their gun as they hopelessly bled out on the ground. At this point, I figured I'd simply use the specialized medic operator and revive my teammates from a distance without having to go through that whole mess, but boy was I fucking wrong. As it turns out, at some point in development, they decided to disable the ability to revive with her stim gun, meaning the only thing it does is heal your teammates over time when you manage to shoot them. The problem is as everyone's health pool is so fucking low, and as you can just pick any other operator and run a health pack to be just as fucking effective, it just becomes such a useless waste of their medic character. I don't mean to be that guy who points at very obvious better solutions to simple problems, but it's almost astounding that they just disabled the one redeeming quality of this operator. The prophecy foretold that defibrillator snipers and animation revivers would one day be united, and this terrible fucking system made that happen. To its credit, unlike Battlefield 4 at least, players don't need to sacrifice one out of their 2 gadget slots just to have the ability to revive people, so at least they didn't fuck that up a second time. The other operators were also a bit hit and miss. Boris has a sentry gun that can be placed to fire on infantry. However, the problem is that no matter how fucking hard I tried, I couldn't get this to score a kill if my life depended on it. Next up was Webster McKay, probably the best operator I played, who came equipped with a very satisfying grappling hook that's just weighty enough to seem realistic. Players by now have probably noticed that between a hefty grapple, bot-populated servers, and giant fucking death machines that fall from the sky, this game probably reminds you of another game I'd mentioned once or twice, which is admittedly why I had so much hope for this title. The last operator was Wikus van de Adver, a South African drone specialist, and if his name sounds familiar, it's because District 9's South African main character was named something incredibly similar.
We are here at MNU head office, Department of Alien Affairs. My name is Wikus van de Adver.
This does lead into another perhaps overlooked issue that you tend to feel almost immediately. Although the user interface is perhaps one of the cleanest in gaming history, the feedback for a lot of your actions is relegated to a place where you don't even see them. Viewers will probably know that I'm very likely to gravitate towards support roles for these types of experiences, and one of the most important features of designing these systems is giving proper feedback to the player. To demonstrate this properly, let's look at Overwatch. When you heal a teammate, you can see their health bar fill, you can hear audio feedback based on their current health, and even if you only slightly tickle a player before your cracked teammate takes them out, the game will make the same sound as if you also got the kill. These are little things, but they are so fucking underrated when it comes to rewarding a player for actions that aren't as inherently satisfying as scoring a kill. I suspect that if they could somehow implement similar feedback to tanks when they manage to block fatal damage, it would make that underplayed role a lot more rewarding, but I fucking digress. Perhaps the most baffling aspect of this feedback issue is that they actually did it really fucking well in previous games. Battlefield 5 was almost obsessed with giving you notifications whenever someone grabbed ammo from your back or your bandages from the ground. On top of this, if you revived someone, you'd also score what's called health insurance, where any points your patient racked up a few seconds after you picked them up would be awarded to yourself in equal amount. When it comes to Battlefield, it tends to take a lot of encouragement to synergize as a team. And if a system like that can stop fields of people immediately fast tracking their respawn out of habit, that's a very small price to pay. Viewers should probably keep in mind that supposedly this was a pretty old build of the game, and while I suspect a lot of the bugs will be weeded out before launch, there seems to be a lot left that might not make the current release date as it now stands. None of what I mentioned is quite enough to cancel my pre-order of the game, but this wasn't the case for a few people I know, so before committing entirely, I'd probably suggest holding off for some more concrete reviews at launch. As it stands, it looks as if DICE is being particularly receptive to player feedback, but I'm also a lot more tempered about my own level of hype as I wonder to myself whether this will be the personal game of the year that I had long hoped it could be.